Anthony Rogers. How do you reconcile Jesus forgiving the adulterous woman versus the punishment of in the Old Testament? Thanks in advance. Well, this one is simple in this sense. In the according to the Old Testament, the punishment for adultery is stoning. That also has other requirements. There needs to be 2 or 3 witnesses. The punishment is not simply for the woman, but for the man who commits the crime. The person who witness it has to be the person to cast the first stone, right? Because the other witnesses, the other people, everybody's supposed to be joined in. It's supposed to be a community thing. It's not just one individual, but the whole community. But the witness or witnesses have to be the ones that throw the stone. And if they don't, nobody else can, because this means that ultimately the blame is on these witnesses if they're lying, right? If somebody is stoned because these people bore false witness, then they're the ones that are responsible, right? And that's why bearing false witness is such a serious thing. When you bear false witness, you are, especially in a court of law. When you look at the 10 Commandments, the 9th commandment, and by the way, I don't know if you've the way I remembered the 10 Commandments, I taught these to my kids this way. These aren't all as clever as they're not all equally clever, but there's only one God, right? Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, right? A likeness. See how that other finger is supposed to be like that. Then you remember the 3rd commandment by saying, thou shalt not, blaspheme the name of the Lord. So your words don't speak against the Lord. The 4th commandment is remember the Sabbath day, rest, keep it holy, right? 5th commandment, honor thy father and thy mother. The 6th commandment is, see these 6 fingers, thou shalt not murder. The 7th commandment is, thou shalt not commit adultery. Stop, right? 7 fingers. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. I don't know if you can see that. I'm taking 8 fingers. Thou shalt not steal. Then there's, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. So this finger is crouching down, and these other fingers are tail bearing against it. And then the 10th commandment is thou shalt not covet. I guess I'm not getting my camera right here. Anyways, so the 9th commandment is set in a judicial context, right? It says thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. It's not just talking about lying, simple lying. That comes under it, but it's the way it's couched here is it assumes a legal context, right? In other words, in a court of law, do not say that your neighbor committed a crime that your neighbor did not commit. Otherwise, according to the law, right? According to the law, whatever punishment would have happened to that person that you're lying about gets exacted upon you. So if you say that a person is guilty of a capital crime and they weren't, you're bearing false witness, then you deserve the death penalty, according to the law of Moses, right? Eye for eye, tooth for tooth. So when somebody bears witness to something, and this is going to result in someone's death, everybody has to join in on the punishment, right? Because this shows that the entire community is disassociating itself from this crime. They're abominating it. They're joining in the Lord's judgment, that sort of thing. But if that person doesn't, if the person doesn't throw the stone, nobody else can, if any of those persons. So what does Jesus do in the context? He says, let him who's without sin cast the first stone. And, in effect, he's also appealing to the fact, and nobody does so, by the way, right? Everybody turns and walks away. So Jesus had no obligation to stone the woman. The other thing is, that Jesus tells us that he didn't come into the world to judge the world. That wasn't his office, right? He wasn't a judge. who is in the sense of an earthly magistrate, right? Obviously, he is the judge of judges, right? But he came into the world not for the purpose of executing his judgment, right? The demons cried out, "Have you come to judge us?" Right, before the appointed time, and we know the answer is that Jesus came into the world to save the world, not demons, but he came into the world to save his people, and um, so number one, none of the people that were standing there condemned the woman and initiated throwing stones, and therefore it would have been illicit for anybody else to do so. Number two, Jesus didn't come into the world to exercise that office. He didn't hold the position of a magistrate, in which case he could have, decided this matter, and he came into the world. He held no office, no earthly office, right? He wasn't part of the priesthood. He wasn't a king, right? Again, I'm talking in terms of earthly office, political office. So that's basically my answer to the question. But you don't see Jesus there. Just to be clear, you don't see Jesus saying that there's anything wrong with the Mosaic punishment, right? He doesn't say that adultery doesn't deserve death, right? That's not even part of his discourse there. According to the New Testament, the law of Moses is absolutely just. It's an absolutely just law. The New Testament writers show no embarrassment over the Mosaic punishments. And I only mention that because you get a lot of people today. Like I've heard people say, when somebody says, look at all these things in the Old Testament, these are terrible things. And so they say, well, that was Old Testament. This is New Testament. Well, whatever the case might be, right? Whether you say the Old Testament judicial punishments have been set aside, they shouldn't be applied by contemporary magistrates, that's a different question. But I think it's inappropriate to say, in response to somebody who says these were terrible laws, to say, well, that was the Old Testament, this is the New. Because what you're saying is, yeah, those laws were terrible, but the New Testament has nicer laws or something. Those laws were fundamentally just, right? Adultery deserves the death penalty, right? Blasphemy deserves the death penalty. Murder deserves the death penalty, right? According to the Bible. And, even if it's not the province of a contemporary civil magistrate to exact certain punishments that were found in the Mosaic law, whatever the case may be, it's not because they're not just. They're no longer just, right? Those laws are just. And our defense of Mosaic punishments shouldn't be, shouldn't sound like we're saying God is nicer now, right? Or, these are improved things. We have to have a more robust answer to that sort of thing.